You mentioned when you were speaking the concept of partnership, not paternalism, which is something that I think is really valued and important and crucial in sort of bridging those gaps. And I was wondering what you have seen as being successful or failures in that process, and how you think we need to move forward with that in mind.
Well, some of the successes, the way that PEPFAR worked, which was the initial director of PEPFAR, Randy Tobias, got off to a very quick start, and he did that by moving people on the ground, American experts, coordinating experts, and getting what they came to be known as single country plans that were actually created by the country's health minister, okay, with consultation with American consultation, and we brought resources to those plans. Okay, so when I went to Namibia, we had someone from the CDC, Tom, I'm trying to remember his last name, a really great guy, AIDS expert, that had been in the U.S. AIDS epidemic for a long time, who sat in the office next to the Namibian health minister, who was a really good guy, and worked with him every single day in implementing the Namibian country plan. Okay, and the U.S. side was organized, and the other side was organized, and everyone was on the same page. And that's not the way that aid is usually done. It's just not really done that way. Now there are some other examples. Kenya is a bad example. They have a very corrupt government and not very effective health infrastructure. Just marvelous place in many ways, but they have their governmental tradition is not a particularly good one. And in those cases, you do have to, PEPFAR went in and sometimes had to work around the system and try to just make things work. So it really varies, kind of how you approach this. But the preference is is clearly to have the countries themselves create the plan, take ownership of the plan, get outside help to implement it. And I think that's been very successful in some circumstances. It's the hardest thing that USAID and other development bureaucracies do, which is it's called technical assistance. Okay, it's trying to train local bureaucracies, local civil servants, local health officials, and everything in systems and management, and actually building a system instead of contracting with U.S. NGOs to provide services. Okay, those are that can help people. It helps people, but it doesn't build capacity. Okay. And so I think the current administration has a real emphasis on what do we do as the next steps now that we've drilled down on some of these major health crises. How do you then build broader capacity in these systems? And the goal, of course, is PEPFAR is called the emergency plan. It can't be forever. Eventually countries have to take ownership on some of these things. We'll be spending money for a long time, but you very much want to begin to transfer a lot of authority. So but I don't want to underestimate it's a challenge. I sat next to, at the early part of this, the South African health minister, who was telling me that AIDS was a myth, that it was treated, that the best treatment for the underlying thing was garlic. Okay, at the highest levels of the South African government, there was a deep irresponsibility for years when it came to the AIDS crisis. Okay, so that had to change first. So we actually went in and worked with a lot of great mid-level people in South Africa who knew what they were doing, and while the politically oriented leadership was not very good. So you have to. It really varies.